I used to dread the church's gift day. I always felt that I was standing in front of people that I know and love and having to be a pastor 51 weeks of the year, but 1 year being a fundraiser, where my job was to convince people to part with their money to fund the schemes that the church had cooked up on its church council, and that my job was really to try and kind of get you to part with shed loads of money for the plans that really other people had come up with. And several things happened to change that. I think first is realizing that I am not a fundraiser and I'm not standing up this morning as a fundraiser. The Lord has all the money that he needs, and he will make sure Christ Church has all the money we need. As someone once said, the good news is we have all the money we need. The bad news is it's still in your wallet. But we're not standing here as fundraisers because it just so happens really that God calls us to be generous. Remember, God doesn't want your money. He wants your generosity. It's the attitude of the heart that counts. And it just so happens that the need of the church community here at Christ Church is simply an opportunity for us to put into practice a vital Christian discipline, which is to give. Just as when there's a crisis in your home life or in your family, you fall to prayer, don't you? And nothing gets you praying more than a crisis. The crisis is the opportunity to put into practice what we know is a good discipline, prayer. And the need of the church for finances is simply an opportunity for us to put into practice that discipline of generosity, which would be true whether we needed money or whether we didn't need any money. The second thing that changed my attitude to it, some of you may remember, was I went to be the vicar of a church in London, and in the congregation was the chief executive of a major high street bank. And we were doing a building project, needed to raise a lot of money, and the church council asked me if I would go and talk to 4 or 5 of the businessmen in our community to ask them to give quite a large amount of money. They suggested an amount and then sent the vicar off to do this, and I just was dreading it. And I went up to Canary Wharf, to HSBC Tower. The receptionist rings the bell, and my colleague comes down from the top floor. He's the chief executive, and he takes me out for lunch, quite a nice lunch, as I remember. And then comes the moment when I have to do the pitch, and I just hate this. I'm a vicar. I don't know how to do this. I said, well, we need some money, and it's quite a lot of money. A huge amount of money, really. And I was just wondering if you might be able to sort of help us a little bit. I mean, this is obviously you don't have to. I appreciate you have lots of demands, and I understand you might not want to. You might even want to go to a different church after this. So I get that. And he just said, Tim, how much do you need? I said, well, obviously it's difficult to put an exact figure on it, and I just don't want to be. He said, Tim, how much do you need? I said, well, this is really embarrassing. And he said, and this is the line. He said, Tim, I'm the chief executive of HSBC. I don't get embarrassed talking about money. And you think, of course you're not. He's not embarrassed talking about money. He said, Tim, how much do you need? I said, well, actually, we were hoping you might give us sort of 20,000 pounds. And he said, well, give me the literature, show me what you need for it, show me what to do for it. And actually he did. In fact, what he did was he said, I will give it to you, but I want to match it with other people. So for every, up to 20,000 pounds, every pound someone else gives, I'll match it, which was very, very wise, because it didn't disempower the rest of the people in the congregation, but enabled his giving to resource and motivate everyone else. But it taught me, we're not embarrassed talking about money. The Bible talks about money. And in this book of Proverbs, it talks about money all the time. I mean, Proverbs is hard to preach on because it's like a mine, a gold mine. And the nuggets are kind of distributed wherever they are. And you have to mine for them and pull them out. So you don't get the chapter on money and wealth. You get it dotted around all over the place because money is linked to every other area of life. But we had a number read to us. And what you will see, what we're going to see this morning as we look through some of these proverbs on giving and the wisdom of generosity, we're going to see 3 things. Firstly, we're going to see how money exercises great power over us. Secondly, we're going to see why it does that. And thirdly, we're going to see how to break its power over us. So firstly, the book of Proverbs shows us how it is that money has great power over us. See, money is neither good nor bad in and of itself. The problem is money doesn't exist in and of itself. It all belongs to somebody. I mean, there is no money just lying around, is there? I mean, you might want to check, but I don't. We check before the service. I always do, and there's none I can see. Any child's dropped 2 pence will have that, in the offering. But there's no money. Doesn't exist in and of itself. It always exists in someone's bank account or someone's purse or wallet. And that's the thing, that it then starts to change, because money is neutral, but it changes. And what's more, it not only changes in the hands of different kinds of people, but it changes the people it's in the hands of. Money has the power to make or break communities. The first slide says this: the wages of the righteous is life, but the earnings of the wicked are sin and death. What does that mean? Well, you have to understand that in the book of Proverbs, the righteous person is the believer, the one who trusts in God, the one who knows that God has made heaven and earth and is the Lord of all. That's the righteous. The wicked are people that don't believe there's any God and that we're just living this life the best we can and scraping together whatever good fortune we can. So it says the righteous and the wicked are going to earn money. But when the righteous earn money, their money will bless the whole community. But the wages of the wicked is like death, because the wicked just, so it's my money, it's my good fortune, what's mine is mine, finders keepers, I got it, it's mine. Because they don't believe in God, and if you don't believe in God, why should you believe in anything else? You just think, well, it's my good fortune, I've got it. But when it comes to the righteous, those who believe in God, it brings life. Why? Because the righteous businessman, just take this as an example, the righteous businessman finds their business prospering. And if you're a Christian, you're going to have a view to care for the employees. You're going to have a view to care for the people that are helping you to generate that income. You're going to want to see that the wages rise in proportion to the success of the business, because you understand that you're simply a steward of it. It's not yours. It doesn't mean you're better or more superior to anyone else. It just means that you've been blessed. And you understand, therefore, your responsibility to bless those who are enabling that business to flourish. The wicked, they just take the money they've got and it's theirs. They save it for themselves, become wealthy, and don't necessarily do anything for the workers and the people that are making that wealth possible. In the hands of the righteous, it brings life. But in the hands of the wicked, it just brings death. Communities are disintegrated because a few people hoard everything to themselves. You think, well, we all know this today, but this is 2,800 years ago. How wise was that, to see that then? It's never changed in all that time. It's still true today. The wages of the righteous bring life. In 1878, George Cadbury, of the chocolate fame, he established a foundation. He was very wealthy and successful in business. Chocolate was booming, still is. And he asked the Lord what he should do with his wealth. Should I give some of it away? Should I give it to this person or that person? And the Lord spoke to him, and we have his journals. The Lord spoke to him. He said, build me a town. Build me a town. And he began to reflect on the way his workers lived, often in extreme poverty, in houses that were little better than slums. And he built the village of Bourneville. He said, why should our workers not have a share in the blessing that God has brought to our business? And so in 1878, George Cadbury begins to build the village of Bourneville. It was an age of entrepreneurs. Many people becoming very wealthy in the late 1800s because of that was the age they were living in. Hundreds of entrepreneurs, many of whose were incredibly successful and made them very wealthy. How many of you have heard of Bourneville? You look around you. Hands down. Name me one other person from the 1870s who made millions and millions of pounds. There are some, but it's interesting, isn't it? The wages of the righteous are life. It brings life, and we all love life, and life is celebrated and remembered for years and hundreds of years to come. Nobody remembers the entrepreneurs who got stinking rich, because at the end it brought death. It just took money out of the community and did nothing to benefit anyone else. And no one's really interested in remembering them. Why should they be? The wages of the righteous are life. How wise is that? So money has the power to make or to break communities. Money has the power to make or break the soul. Wealth magnifies the soul. If you're anxious or carefree, if you're stingy or generous, money will amplify it. Money doesn't, it just helps people to see more clearly the kind of person that you are. A colleague of mine knows a woman who lived in central London. She used to get on a bus at 6:30 in the morning, the number 9 bus, and she would spend all day on it. She would spend most of the night on the night bus and only go home in the early morning for breakfast and to change, because she was too stingy to keep the heating on during the day. So she just kept warm in the bus all day. She just spent the whole day traveling around London, same route, just spend all day on it. There are people who do that. And then she would just get off it in about 6 in the morning, go home, get changed, then get back on the bus. That's how she lived. And then her aunt died, and she became a multi-millionaire. But when I was still in London 3 years ago, she was still getting on a bus at 8 o'clock in the morning and spending all day because she didn't want to pay the gas bill. See, wealth just amplifies what we are. It doesn't actually have that much power to change us. In fact, it just brings out the true nature of who we really are. Jesus said that wealth is deceptive. He said that about the seed and the sower. He said wealth is deceptive. It deceives us. It takes us down the pathway of foolishness. Wealth deceives us in a number of ways. This is why it has this incredible power over us. We read this proverb. Wealth is worthless in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. What does that mean? See, wealth deceives us. It makes us think we're immune. If I've got money, then life will go well for me. Because as long as I've got money, I'm going to be better off than someone who hasn't got money. But it says it's worthless in the day of wrath. Now, the day of wrath was the day of disaster. It's the day you find out that a close friend has had a terrible medical diagnosis, or you've had a medical diagnosis. It's the day you lose your job. It's the day a best friend betrays you, and you can't believe that this has happened to you. It's the day when calamity comes upon you. It was called the day of wrath. And it's saying that when the day of wrath comes, the wealthy aren't really prepared for it because they think that they're going to be secure because of all they've accumulated. But when the day of wrath comes, they realize that the money is useless. The things that matter most in life, money can't deal with. But it has the effect of making us think we'll be immune from it. So money is deceptive. It makes us think we're okay until it all comes crashing down around us. The pursuit of wealth makes us think we're superior. Proverbs 28, better a poor man whose walk is blameless than a rich man's whose ways are perverse. What's that saying? Well, I think sometimes people who've got a lot of money, it can kind of generate a superiority. I've made a lot of money because I'm somehow better than people that haven't. I'm better than people who haven't. And we play up to that. We assume that people who have a lot of money must somehow know more about life than we do, that they're somehow more able to navigate life than we are because they're wealthy. But wealth just means they're wealthy. But for the wealthy, it can sometimes lead to this attitude of superiority. Well, because I'm wealthy, I know more than everyone else. And we see it in today's culture all the time. It never ceases to amaze me how we can be doing a serious documentary on TV or on a news item, perhaps about the national debt or something, and they get on some celebrity from, Desert Island or whatever, and they say, well, what do you think about the national debt? And you kind of think, what on earth would they know about the national debt? They're celebrities. They're not politicians. They're not economists. And yet we buy in this thing that, well, because they're celebrities, I mean, they've been successful. They must be superior. They'll know something that I don't know. But it's deceptive. Money has that ability. And it catches up society in it, making people think they're superior if they are wealthy. And it makes younger people think that I need to make a lot of money and that life is all about making money so that I can feel superior and worthwhile in life, because money is held up as that's the thing you need to get. If you're going to be successful in life or considered that you've made it, you need to at least have a healthy pension and bank account. And it's deceptive because it doesn't mean you're worth anything. Money has the power to make us arrogant. Proverbs 30, keep falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches, lest I forget the Lord. Why does he say that? Why would the writer of Proverbs say that? Because he's noticed, he's observed. In the introduction to Proverbs, it says, I've studied life, I've studied many people. He said, and I've observed these things. The wealthy tend to forget God. So he says, Lord, I want to have enough that I don't steal, but I don't want to have so much that I might be tempted to think that this has come from me, when actually it's come from the Lord. Money has the power to make us arrogant, and it has the power to turn us away from God. Bernard of Clairvaux, always good to get a few of those quotes in, isn't it? You've sort of heard of him, but you've no idea who he was or where he was. Anyway, he's a very famous theologian, spiritual writer, living in the 14th, maybe 15th. When did he finish theological college? I'm just messing with Joel. More than 6 months, he's forgotten everything he was ever taught. Well, actually, I have no idea either. But Bernard of Clairvaux, he wrote, this is really good. He said, to see a man humble in prosperity is the greatest rarity in the world. That's something, isn't it? But the writer of Proverbs saw it thousands of years earlier. Lord, don't make me too rich, lest I forget you, because it has the power to do that. Wealth is deceitful because it makes me think that I'll be satisfied when I've got enough of it. Proverbs 8, with me are riches and honor. Wisdom cries out in the streets. Enduring wealth and prosperity. My fruit, the fruit of wisdom, is better than fine gold. What I yield surpasses choice silver. Wisdom is better than gold because wisdom knows it will never be satisfied if it has just a little bit more. It will always want a little bit more. The wise person knows that and makes sure that their pursuit of wealth never takes them away from knowing and loving the Lord their God. Money is neither good nor evil in and of itself, but it just never exists in and of itself. It's always attached to somebody. And that's why it has this great power over us. But why? Why does it exercise this power? Now, I put in this little proverb here. This is profound. The name of the Lord is a fortified tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. But the wealth of the rich is their fortified city. They imagine it a wall too high to scale. Now, what's that saying? In the ancient world, the city was the only really safe place for your wealth. Outside the city, there are no police, there's no highway patrol. You are subject to all kinds of bandits and robbers. You remember the parable of the Good Samaritan? The man going a simple journey from down to Capernaum, and he's robbed. That was standard. If you had anything, any wealth at all, anything you wanted to preserve, you wanted to live in a city because the city would have walls, it was guarded, and that's where your safety was. So it was well known that cities were places of wealth. That's how cities became originally places of financial institution, because that's where the money was. You couldn't risk having it out in the open desert because somebody would break in and steal it. So if you had money, you invested it in businesses, you invested it in property in the city. Even if you didn't live there, you wanted it in the city where it was going to be safe. It became, if you like, the stronghold. It was the first corporate bank, if you like. The city was where the commerce of society existed. And the writer to Proverbs is saying that the wealth of the rich is like a fortified city. They imagine that the walls will be too high for anyone to scale or to get into. They put their hope in the city to preserve their wealth. But the righteous, they don't trust in the city. They know that cities also can fall. They know that markets can also crash. They know that all wealth comes from the Lord their God, and he is in control of their life. The righteous, they make the Lord their strong tower. That's where they put and devote their energies, into knowing the Lord. When things are really unsafe and dread overwhelms us, where do you go? Do you go to your money, or do you run into the strong tower that is the Lord? What does that mean? The Lord is a strong tower. Here's 4 things, just to remind you, that you need to know about the Lord. Number 1, he is your Father. Number 2, he knows everything. Number 3, he's in control of the destiny of the whole world. Number 4, he loves you infinitely. The writer in Proverbs is saying, run into that. Make that truth. Pound it into your heart. Earlier on in Proverbs, it says, write it on your neck. Bind it around your heart. Pound it into your soul till you know, and repeat it to yourself. He's my Father. He's in control. He's saying, make that the strong tower you run into. Let that be where you find a sense of security and trust in the day of wrath. Money has such a high power over us because without the Lord, it seems to be the only security we have, guaranteeing us a better standard of healthcare, a better future, a better retirement. Ever since the fall, when we forgot how to trust God for these things, we have reached for money and see money as the solution to that desperate sense of insecurity and worthlessness that knocks at my door of my heart all the time. And money is the easiest way without God to get a sense of meaning and purpose and belonging for my life, a sense of superiority that I count for something because I've made some money. But the righteous, they've discovered that the Lord is a strong tower. They've discovered that he is an unending supply of righteousness that speaks to me day in and day out of my value and my worth. He speaks to me about how precious my life is before him, whether I make a ton of money or not. And the answer is not for my stage of life. But, some of you probably have. That's wonderful. I'm glad you have, because you're probably benefiting the well-being of the whole community because you're a righteous employer or you're a righteous entrepreneur. So whether you have a lot or a little, the Lord is our strong tower. Money has so much power over us because of a fallen world. We're all looking to feel secure, and money is the easiest way of feeling secure, but it's so deceptive because it doesn't work in the day of wrath. And finally, how then do I break the power of money so that money in my hands becomes a life-giving thing rather than something that brings death? Might bring life to me for a short period, but as the scriptures also say, may your money perish with you, and it will. How do we be wise instead of foolish? Proverbs says, choose my instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire can compare with her. What's he doing? He's appealing to natural wisdom. A natural wisdom. I mean, just think about it, he's saying. Just think about it. You may have heard this before. Money can buy medicine, but it cannot buy health. It can buy a house, but not a home. Money can buy companionship, but not friendship. Money can buy entertainment, but not happiness. Money can buy food, but not an appetite. Money can buy a bed, but it cannot buy sleep. It can buy a crucifix, but not a savior. It can buy a good life, but not eternal life. Think about it. He just says, just think about it. Isn't that true? That's true, isn't it? You just think about it. Doesn't natural wisdom teach you that money alone cannot be the strong tower that we run to in the day of wrath, because it can't give us the things that we most deeply desire? He's saying, be wise. Think about it. Just think logically about the truth of it. Secondly, Proverbs says this: one man gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly and comes to poverty. A generous man will prosper. He who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. What does that mean? It means that we need to see ourselves as stewards, not as owners. Stewards, not owners. All the wealth we have, we're just stewards of it. It's been entrusted to us. And that's how we break the power of money over us, so that when we come into money, we're stewards of it. It's not mine. And we've got into a discipline, Jan and I, we just planned a holiday, and we find where we want to go, and we find it all online. Before we press go, and we learned to do this only a few years ago, we stop, and we go into the lounge, and we sit down, and we pray, Lord, we are about to spend a lot of money. Is that okay with you? It's all yours. It's yours, Lord. I know that you want us to have times of refreshment. Your word tells us we need to refresh. And you give us this money that we have, and we can afford, by the grace of God, to take a holiday. But Lord, is that okay with you? Because it's not mine. It's from him. Do you pray about before you buy a new car? Well, you should. Just say, Lord, is it okay? Is it okay I buy a new car? I've prayed that every year for the last few years. I've never had a yes. So I'm asking if you'll join me in prayer. I think we might have a yes actually later on. I don't know, but it's the principle, isn't it? And I'm not always good at doing this, and for years I didn't really get this, but I'm trying to do this now. See, be a steward. It's not mine. It comes from him. Being a steward and having that view of it helps people to break the power of money. In Christian circles, some people say, the first 10% belongs to God. No, it doesn't. It all belongs to God, doesn't it? The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Psalm 24, verse 1, all belongs to him. The first 10% is just to remind you that it all belongs to him. Not, I've given 10% and that's it, I've done my duty. That's not generous. That's just doing your duty. I don't want to do my duty, I want to be generous. For some of you, you may not be able to give that amount. For others of you, you can give much more than that. It's about generosity, being a steward. Proverbs says, be generous. A generous man will himself be blessed, for he shares his food with the poor. Generosity releases the blessing of God on your life, as well as on the life of the recipient. Jesus said you cannot outgive God. Anyone who gives for God or gives up anything for God will receive back good measure, pressed down and running over. That's what the scriptures tell us. And finally, Proverbs says you break the power that money has over you by being a worshipper. Proverbs 3, verses 9 and 10. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. If you put your hands up high in praise, then put them deep into your pockets in giving. As high as we worship the Lord, as deeply do we want to be generous. This, my friends, is wisdom. This is how the righteous are wise. This is how we understand the power that money can have over us. But it's how we break that power so that in your hands, in my hands, money becomes life, not death. And long after you and I have passed away from this world, people will remember because they will see the fruits of your generosity. He, she was a generous person. Everyone remembers a generous person.